Happy Sunday, it's Annabelle. Welcome to our sketchbook story. This is my first entry and I know I am behind, so I'm finishing up the second entry from 2 weeks ago. This is my festive candle for the mood, and this is what I did last time, like 3 little paintings. I'm not including the third one that I really didn't like, so refer to the other video if you want to catch up on that. And I'm using black paper because the gouache paints, the colors will really pop on that surface. The first thing I did was use a ruler to get the 5.5 by 8.5 measurement, but I didn't account for the little margin on the actual page, so I cut this out for nothing. So what I should have done in the first place was just hold up the paper to the page and mark the edges, and then I cut it off roughly just so I can get that really precise edge once it's off that huge sheet that was really hard to maneuver. Now that I'm ready to go for the collaging, I'm just sorting out how I want them on a whim. This is a very casual exercise for me. It's supposed to be relaxing and not stressful, so I'm doing everything very improvised. So I took in this paper that I was going to recycle. I ripped it out of my notepad and it's very lightly dotted. You can't really see it from this far up. I don't really like that it's white and you could paint or mark it with marker, but I just left it be because I wanted the dots, even though you can't see it right now. So I'm trying to figure out how I want it, whether it's 2 ovals next to each other, just like plain window, or overlapping, whatever it was. So I was entertaining that idea first, which is why I'm trimming the sides, trying to make the ovals more narrow just because they're a little bit crowded. And here I have receipts and parts of the boarding pass from that day, so you can work those elements in as if it's like very scrapbooky. You can include memos like that, but I didn't like how this looked, so I peeled it away. I think it's really just because a lot of it is white, so that just looks very unfinished in a way, and I don't have any washi tape or like cute ribbons or stickers or anything to help me out, so I'm going in a different direction. But first and foremost, I'm just going to put the double-sided tape down and get the black paper secure. So I just line all of the edges. You could use a glue stick, but I didn't want any mess or any sticky fingers to mess up the paintings, so I just went with that. And the bottom was just a teeny bit off, so I'm filling it in with marker, and it works wonders because it dries matte. And so next to deal with is the paper, and I didn't want it to look too stuck on. It was either cutting the corners or cutting the paper into a shape, but I settled for ripping the edge off one of the sides just to give it texture and some variation. And then I kept shifting it and layering it with different things to try to figure out how I wanted it, but I just realized I did not like both of the ovals together, and the idea of one on top of the other like a flip book revealing it seemed pretty cool. As you see here, I'm taking the same paper, just the other half of it from earlier, and making a hinge. Then once that was in position, I used my pencil to lightly mark just where I wanted it to be, to where I would eventually put the double-sided tape, because I wanted to save tape. So I basically used that to overlap the big flap of paper, and then also have the remaining be stuck on with where the little slip of paper would cover it up. Once that is secured, I don't want to accidentally fold it too far away from the actual edge. So first using fingers to tap it down, and then the sharp edge of a ruler would do fine. Now I'm placing the airplane window painting on top of here and lightly marking underneath just where it will go, so that when I have the double-sided tape all ready to go, I really only have one shot before it's just permanent, because that paper is so thin, there's no way that you can rip it off and adjust it. And because the painting from the gouache dries matte, and especially that's a very dark surface, there's a chance that I could have dirtied the painting if I pressed it too much. The safest thing to do is to cover it up with a napkin or just a clean sheet of paper and then press down to secure it if you have adhesive on the bottom. Then for the inside flap, I wanted to have some element of surprise and not just like smack, there's the painting on the inside. So I marked where the very bottom of that paper goes to the very outer edge and made a geometric shape. It really could be something more unique, but I thought a triangle was nice enough to offset that oval. And I'm using acrylic gouache just the same as last time, in the same color that the jacket is used with in the painting. And yes, I marked up the table on accident just then, but don't worry, I will notice eventually. So I'm painting on the gouache, and you might notice that the paint tray that I'm using is actually just like a lid. Whether it's like instant ramen sometimes comes in a plastic tray, or like the cover for to-go sushi or something, those make really good and convenient paint trays. So before you recycle it, you can use it for something first. But as I was saying, I'm now building up the acrylic wash, and I'm not so experienced with it yet, so it's still very streaky. But you know, I aspire to one day be able to paint very matte with the perfect consistency and just the right level of water and paint. As for the placement of this, I want it to be exactly the same as the painting on the outside, and you can kind of see it through, or at least feel it. I placed it right behind and prepped this painting to be all lined up with a double-sided tape, and then carefully closed it and then pat it so that it would be secure, and that's that. So it was pretty fast. This is when I realized that I marked up the table, so I'm securing the inside painting, and now it's time to move on to the abyss that surrounds it. Not gonna lie, I had some trouble finding what I wanted to do with it just because I'm very limited in time and also materials. So I whipped out that white gouache, and what do you do when you have a dark surface? You can make stars, and everything just looks very aesthetic and cute because of it. But you know, it kind of relates to the flight, because I was on an afternoon flight where the sun set and it turned into night. This tool that I'm using to dot the gouache is actually what you punch holes with when you bind books. So I just had that on me, but you can use a toothpick or a bobby pin. But this gives me a lot of variation because I can sort of angle it and drag the paint to make like little stars here and there, and I wanted it to go into the back. As a surface designer, you want your stars or whatever motif that you're working with to sort of go off the edge. That way it's not recognizing so much like the page as a contained space. Now I'm just cleaning things up. I had a little bit of red paint, but of course the same thing using a brush pen from Copic markers works amazingly. Then I'm just filling the bottom with stars, but I wanted it to be sort of a gradient where it's darker on the bottom. And then moving on to the white paper, I thought, okay, maybe I'll just make an inverse version because it's like a pale paper. I almost painted it yellow or wanted to use marker to make some pattern or even like a big drawing, but I wanted to keep it simple. So I'm taking my Copic marker 0.03. All the materials are always down in the description, by the way. And making the stars, trying to mimic the layout of the space around it as if it's continuous but just inverted. And so the last step is to write a little memo, because decades from now, hopefully, when I look back at this, it's going to be so different. You know, I'm not going to remember things as clearly as I do now. So I wrote myself a little note kind of to remember the day, the exact date, and just the thoughts that were going through my head when I was on that flight starting my last year here at university. And that reads, September 4th, 2019, solo trip back to RISD from San Francisco Airport, stopping in Georgia, and then up to Providence, Rhode Island. The fall term of my last year of university, I witnessed the sun wane into a beautiful dusk, and looked out the window into deep, dark blue, and promised myself, this year is going to be good. This year is going to be lived fully, and with great effort. Each year following will be too. I hope that you enjoy this process. I know that it's sort of anticlimactic because I am just making up for the incomplete entry from 2 weeks ago. I've been very rushed and just, like buried in work and trying to get the vlog up on Cat Creature as well. But thank you so much for sharing your time. I will surely be with you very soon for our next entry. I'm really excited to fill up this whole sketchbook.